Well, hello, that's me again. Today is February 1st. It is Saturday, so I decided to kind of, make your weekend a little bit rotten, if you wish. Time to get some updates on some critical issues of our time. And there are some critical issues of our time, to put it mildly, especially with the, let's say, very energetic activity developed by Mr. Trump and his administration. And we will start with the, basically news. And as I already stated many times before, I never thought myself to be a political commentator, but evidently, it comes with the territory. And I will be talking today about some missiles and missile defenses because it's becoming a circus and actually the stand-up comedy on part of the United States with this whole thing. But before we go, let's go to the other type of the stand-up comedy. And we go to Mr. Trump, and you know what? He's talking about BRICS and that they should really be very cautious about what they're doing in terms of their currency. You see, here's what his 2 days ago on his whatever Truth Network or whatever the name of the thing he uses nowadays, that the idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. We're going to require commitment from these seemingly hostile countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar. They will face 100% tariffs and should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful US economy. I mean, the whole, it's a high school level. Okay, make no mistake, I voted for Trump, and this was obviously holding my nose because obviously Donald J. Trump is way better for the United States and possibly for the world than obviously the absolutely nut job and homicidal Biden administration. But here it is. This is the verbiage or vernacular, if you wish, of the high schooler, and this is absolutely true whenever it comes to all kinds of the matters on the global arena. Trump proved himself totally inadequate on this matter in his first term, and I don't think so he will be adequate on this one too. And this, we'll talk about this later down this in this video. But the problem, of course, somebody has to tell Trump that, for example, United States can impose 150 or 250% tariffs on Russia. Russians do not care. Russians have the minuscule trade turnout with or turnover with the United States, something like on the order of $7 billion. It's a pocket change, and the United States still depend on Russian uranium. And so what can I say? Sure, let Mr. Trump impose these currencies, and I'm pretty sure he should be informed that actually BRICS countries trade in own currencies. If Mr. Trump wants to forbid the Chinese yuan, Russian ruble, or India's rupee, well, good luck to him. But I think the guy thinks that he's so, irresistible and so shiny that people will just fall, back and shaking their boots. Obviously, this is not the case, and it never was the case, as is the case with OPEC Plus, which simply ignored Trump's calls on lowering the price of oil, and will continue to do whatever it's doing, basically producing in accordance to its own plans. And yeah, US brokers will do what they also do, speculate. That's the only thing they are capable of, because most of them, they cannot produce anything. So, but this is just the start of the whole thing. Obviously, we have now the situation with Rand, okay? And you know that I also I'm not critical. I'm laughing at Rand and all those their specialists. And so look at this. And just last year they produced this report. Okay, that's what those people do. They are paid money to lie, to cheat, to steal, to provide all kinds of BS. And so they talk about Russia's imperial ambitions are a clear threat to NATO. And this, I don't know, Rand already completely discredited itself as any serious serious organization. Fact is, in Russia, they are laughed at as a bunch of nincompoops with all those credentialed and high rank, former generals and PhDs and former ambassadors who prove themselves essentially amateurs, because practically the whole foreign service in the United States is the bunch of amateurs. And the same goes for Pentagon. And when you read this and look at this, these are guys who continue to push this narrative, which is important. That's the only thing which American think tanks do. They produce narratives. They are incapable of doing any practical matters to any positive effect. But as long as the rulers in Moscow use force to pursue imperial ambition, Russian neighbors and NATO members will be under threat. So this is written by the John Taft and William Courtney. So I want to remind you who John Taft is. He is a colorless, probably CIA asset, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, and he basically marked himself as the guy who was absolutely not qualified for running any kind of the serious, relations between the United States and Russia. And yeah, these are the people who continue to find their sinecures where they need to retire, because those people love their, morning golf in whatever Sunday, and they want to pay, something for their children or grandchildren. But this is the guy, for example, who distinguished chair in diplomacy and security. Distinguished chair in diplomacy and security in RAND is equivalent of the, I don't know, it's pathetic really. So, and here John Taft holds the distinguished chair in diplomacy and security in RAND Corporation and is a retired United States diplomat. As I already stated, these are the people, these are so-called diplomats, most of whom, not all, but majority of them are like this. They prostitute themselves for any kind of decent pay, and yeah, that's how the United States diplomacy and foreign service operate. And if that hasn't been enough, we now have suddenly the stream of consciousness from the new U.S. Secretary of the State, Marco Rubio. And he, while speaking to media, provides some absolutely astonishing, for some, I'm not going to be unnecessarily humble, but it was never news for me, honestly. This is what I'm on record for non-stop. But he talks about, Marco Rubio, that Ukraine conflict needs to end now. Yes, and Federal Reserve System needs to provide me with additional couple of $1 million, because I want, just for the heck of it, that's my desire. But he actually comes with this admission. And this is astonishing for many people in the United States, that it was dishonest to claim that Kyiv could defeat Moscow, the U.S. Secretary of State has said. And he talks about it, that somehow this whole thing about that Kyiv could defeat Moscow was actually, what made people to believe in it. I have the commentary, and I wrote about it in my blog. You can go and read it, that actually it wasn't somehow. It was a fundamental conviction on part of the US military, CIA, and other orgs from Washington, D.C., who believed that Ukraine could defeat Russia militarily to such a degree, at least, or inflict some kind of military pain, that essentially the political objectives of the war of the NATO, essentially United States against Russia, will succeed. And of course, most of them, as Mr. Taft and all kinds of other so-called US diplomats talk about Putin's regime and imperial ambitions. Russians don't have imperial ambitions. They do not have even territorial ambitions per se. But as you can see yourself, even the U.S. Secretary of the State, and he is obviously he is one of the most important political figures in the U.S. hierarchy of political power. He comes out and says somehow people believed it. Well, they believed it because they are amateurs. Most of them are. I mean, you look attentively at those U.S. military people and you literally begin to scratch your head. And so now suddenly we begin to get all those funny retreats, if you wish, from the U.S. media. And you can repeat me, you can quote me and read my lips. And I'm not quoting Tucker Carlson, who said that every other person there is a jerk, or as he said, an a-hole, which is true. I thought that probably 80% of them are like that. But most US mainstream media and some non-mainstream media, the same as the 100% of the British media, or tabloids, whatever they have, reporters who write about the situation with the special military operation are war criminals. They are basically aid and abet to people like this. And what you see here is the guy who has been captured by Russians, and he is the Armed Forces of Ukraine military person who is confessed. No, he wasn't beaten, as you can see yourself. He has a pretty good physical shape. He admitted in killing 22 civilian people and raping 8 women in the, in one of the villages of Kursk Oblast. These are the people which West supports. And if you ask me if he is some exception, no. The atrocities against the civilian population have been well recorded, and they are on the serious scale. This also goes towards the Poles and other people from NATO, including Americans and British, who also committed those type of offenses. French also are well known to behave themselves as Nazis, which they are. And suddenly, after we look at this, we have this situation. This lady, her name is Miroslava Nemtsova. She is Czech senator, and she says that new EU sanctions on Russia should be so strict as to bring about a repeat of the World War II siege of Leningrad. Just remind you that actually in 872 days, 1.5 million people died in Leningrad. So she now deleted this post on X. And so she says that Czech posted, as we remember the victims of the Holocaust and witness the genocide of the Ukrainian people, today Russia celebrates the anniversary of the liberation of Leningrad from the siege during World War II, although they do not need to celebrate, but to experience it again. So this is the thing which I constantly have the repetition of people in my commentaries on my discussion boards under my videos, and I want to again reiterate, guys, whenever I say anything about Europe or Europeans at large, it's not directly towards you. And I understand most people who listen to my podcast and listen to my videos and read my blog, they are decent people. They are decent Europeans. They are decent French, decent Germans. These are good people. They may have different political views, but they are generally good in their foundation. But I do not operate on the personal basis in this particular respect. And when I provide, for example, such things as this Nemtsova lady, we know, Russians know, that Czechs en masse, majority of Czechs hate Russian gods. So, and this Nemtsova lady, she actually expresses the opinions and moods of the majority of the Czechs. How large is this majority? I don't know. Maybe 55, maybe 65%, but this is majority. It doesn't mean that Czech Republic doesn't have good people. It certainly does. There are people who are worthy of admiration and, communication, and it shouldn't be broken between, for example, Russian people and those people. But you have to understand, this is about larger issues. These are geopolitical and cultural issues on the global scale. And when we say the majority of Europeans hate Russian gods, they do. And there, I mean, even if you say that, oh yeah, this opinion poll or that opinion poll, are not real and they are just basically, do not represent the real picture, even if you consider and, introduce some kind of the allowance for some kind of the, as usual with the statistics, inaccuracies, discrepancies and things like that, there is no doubt that Europeans don't like Russians, period. And this goes, for example, not only to this Nemtsova, to Poles. Are there good Polish people? Absolutely. I have my wonderful Polish friends, my dear friends. They're wonderful people, common sense people, very well educated, and they absolutely do not hate Russians, the same as Russians do not hate necessarily Poles as such. But if you look attentively at the majority of the population in terms of the expressing their attitudes and their opinions, yeah, that it is what it is. That is why Russians stopped basically identifying themselves as Europeans. They do not want to actually have anything to do with Europe. And it doesn't mean that when I say those things, I expect people, which many wonderful people from Germany or Ireland or Poland come up and say, no, Andrew, we're not like this. I know you're not like this. Otherwise, you know what, you wouldn't be listening to what I'm saying. But we have to look at the facts, we have to look at the numbers, and totally give ourselves, if you wish, the honest report about what is going on and why it is going on. And so when you look at this type of the posts, yeah, in the end, Czechs removed from Prague, and they say, oh, it's the, you know, the mayor of the Prague, and we really didn't want to do it. No, you did, because in the end, Prague voted for these people. They removed Marshal Konev's monument from the main square of Prague, the liberator of Prague in 1945. There you go. What can I say? So I am on record. Europe doesn't deserve to have Russian soldiers' graves and monuments. They all have to be repatriated and be done and over. Those decent people who, let's say in Czech Republic, those who understand the role of Russia and everything, nobody, you know, prevents them from traveling to Russia or communicating with Russians and establishing their relations. But politically, there is nobody to talk to, and those politicians, they still are supported by the majority of population. It is like alternative for Germany. People say that, oh yeah, it's something somehow related to, you know, a special military operation, and Germany stands essentially, you know, trying to kill Russians. No, it's not. The only reason it is somehow related to whatever the public opinion polls tell us about the alternative for Germany or AfD, it has everything to do with economy primarily. And yeah, this is how it works. I'm sorry. Did you see very many demonstrations demonstrating against the war in Ukraine and supporting Russia for what it's doing in defeating Nazi regime in Kiev? No, and you will not. So, because people react primarily at the economic stimuli outside, and that's what they do. And when things go bad, then suddenly you have those alternative parties, which accidentally, or you know what, by the virtue of them being alternative parties, they have in their program such things as, oh yeah, establish good relations with Russia. In the end, for example, as Germany goes, for Germany it is always about energy. Yeah, you have to have Russia provide Germany energy for Germany to survive as modern nation. No Russian energy, no Germany as we knew it. And there you go, simple as that. And this post of Nemtsova is very indicative as Rand. But then, if that hasn't been enough, we have now situation is even, well, how to put it, CNN. Yeah, so CNN, American fighters are dying in Ukraine in growing numbers, bringing their bodies home is a complex task. Well, they talk about this on day before yesterday, and well, what can I say? So they talk about this, that the bodies of at least 5 American volunteers who signed up to the Ukrainian military could not be retrieved from the battlefield after being killed in action in the past 6 months. CNN found. Well, I have the news for them. There are way more than that, but yeah, whatever. And the stark testimony of their surviving colleagues about how they fight and the growing toll portrays the obscure yet important role of American frontline fighters in a war with President Donald Trump has called ridiculous and has pushed Russian President Vladimir Putin to end it diplomatically. Mr. Trump cannot push Vladimir Putin or Russia to do anything. He simply has no wherewithal to do this. But the important role of Americans fighting at the front lines is about 0. So because, yeah, for those, you know, guys from Hollywood and all those special forces and former imbeciles who think that Russian soldiers suck. I mean, they never encountered the real war. So you have those guys, they go into this war, and CNN even describes this situation, and they get pummeled by the standoff long-range fires, and they sometimes don't see the enemy. When they see the enemy, they encounter the guys with the outstanding military training, such as Russian storm groups, and yeah, you don't have very high probability of surviving that. And even they now, you know, the CNN admits that. And then, of course, we have now this tabloid New York Times, who suddenly says also, look at this, oh my gosh, yeah, here's this Michael Schwirtz and Julian Barnes, they're a bunch of prostitutes, so cuckolds from the New York Times, and so they say that North Korean troops no longer seen on front lines fighting Ukraine. Yes, North Korean soldiers who joined their Russian allies in battle against Ukrainian forces have been pulled off the front lines after suffering heavy casualties, according to Ukrainian and US officials. So, yeah, Ukrainian and US officials are the guys who sell BS, a cornucopia of this garbage. And so, because you have both Michael Schwirtz and Julian Barnes are morons, and they work for the tabloid and SUR, which is New York Times is, well, yeah, they provide this garbage, you know, and obviously many North Korean troops are sitting there wondering how many of us really got killed. I mean, we never thought that we were on the front lines there to start with. But again, this is New York Times. And here we come to the other situation. And this is very important when you look at actually at the real losses of the armed forces of Ukraine. As you can see yourself, we are way above 1 million of killed now. As you can see yourself, this day, today, there are 7 multiple launch rocket systems have been annihilated. As you can see yourself, the number of the killed somewhat is reduced because obviously they have to now, well, essentially they sit into bunkers. That's what they do, the Ukrainian troops. And if you take a look at, for example, at Chasov Yar, as our friend Marat Khairulin shows us, this is where Russians are operating now at Chasov Yar, and it is primarily, well, it's mopping up. Yeah, you have these people sitting in all those buildings, the armed forces of Ukraine and their so-called advisors, and they get killed methodically, slowly, and Russians not gonna throw their large forces. They will continue to do it surgically, moving block by block, and yeah, that's what happens. And yeah, if anybody who is left competent in Pentagon, they should really think hard, you know, that something is wrong with the combat training and the whole concept of the warfighting concept in Pentagon. And let alone, of course, in such mighty countries as Great Britain and, you know, what, United Kingdom continues to, impress everybody with being clowns, in utter clowns. And so the Times, this is the, well, war criminals and, basically SUR of the, which pretend that they, because they are constantly in the incestuous relations in the UK elites, they mean something. They now come up with this news. Next time those news will be that somebody actually, farted or belched something in the 10 Downing Street, and that will be news. But look at this. And that obviously these chihuahuas from Europe, they want to still talk about these peacekeeping forces. They pretend that they matter, they have pathetic armies, but look at this. There is a growing consensus about the peacekeepers, however, that such a post-conflict deployment would need to have Donald Trump's buy-in and security guarantees. Those peacekeepers they want to place in Ukraine. And a senior British government source said Europe alone could generate the ground force if necessary, but ministers were asking for the US to provide air cover for this peacekeeping force. Well, what can I say? You want to stay in headlines? Why don't you constantly come up with all kinds of the garbage and you say, oh, I thought today about, how about Federal Reserve System give me $2 million? That will make news. Can you imagine? Martyanov today discussed, and a named source from Martyanov family said that he thought about, just getting the free money from Federal Reserve System. So this is pretty much it. A known source in the Chihuahua government of the country, which is pathetic economically, militarily, and what have you. And yet they think that they can do some things when they have U.S. air cover. Well, U.S. air cover is a, well, bad idea, even if it comes down to it, because it's going to be gone pretty fast. And Russians are already on the record so many times, including President Putin. And they, obviously, he was very actually ironic, if not sardonic, if you wish, talking to Mr. Zarubin a couple of days ago when he stated, yeah, United States can arrange anything they want in Ukraine in terms of somebody putting some kind of puppet, or Muppet, in the front of Russia for negotiations. And yeah, Keith Kellogg continues to make rounds, parading himself as a clown that he is, oh, President Trump gives some kind of levers to Russia, and yeah, the negotiations are just about to start and all that. No, they're not, and Russians will continue to do what they're doing now. But when you look attentively at the whole environment of this, what is happening around those statements, non-stop leaks, all those unnamed sources, all named sources coming up with all this fluffy rhetoric, we have to keep in mind that things continue to develop in military field in such a way that I am on the record, you can quote me, you can bring me any four-star US general, and we will have a lovely discussion about America's losing their arms race, and especially in critical issues of their anti-missile defense, and that will be lovely. And yeah, they will be, of course, doing what actually Atlantic Council did. And Atlantic Council, citing their missile threat from Russia, China, what have you. And on a month ago, they produced this report. And the report is called First We Will Defend the Homeland, the case for homeland missile defense. And they have all those people, like one general from whatever the forces in the United States, then Kerry Anderson, James McHugh, all kinds of people with some kind of the master's degrees in some kind of the security studies, and having some other issues related to engineering, which is fine. And they talk about this missile defense, and guess what? It's a nauseating and it's boring piece of the document, which you would expect from people who actually abuse their sinecures, especially in such funny organization as Atlantic Council, who wouldn't have a single professional there understanding what they're dealing with. And as you can quote me, they don't have any specialists in Russia, they don't have any professionals in terms of the Russian fighting capability, but what they come up with is very remarkable, because look what they say there. When they talk about generally, plethora of Russian weapon systems, they talk about the repeating same old Start 2, INF, and things like that. And they say that, yeah, some analysts know this and know that. And so they talk about the special military operation, and this in single segment about Russian capability, which of course the United States has absolutely zero capability to stop, none, zilch. Fact is, I would say it is even negative, because essentially but that's the whole other story. The only thing the United States has is something like, some detection capability of, as they say, if Russia decides to do the coercive strike. But primarily this the report is the concoction of the open source garbage which they collected around the internet. And look what they write. Some of these capabilities prove to lack actual combat effectiveness in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Observers have noted high value rates of cruise missile, poor battle damage assessment, ineffectiveness against mobile targets, susceptibility to air defenses, and evidence of poor training of Russian air crews. A Ukrainian defense official stated publicly that Russia had experienced more than 80% of its long-range land attack missiles in the first year of expanded of the war. So there you go. Here's the American general. The guy is obviously doesn't understand. He is laughed at as amateur that he is. And again, there are no serious air defense specialists in the United States, because you saw yourself there. They still continue to produce all those, the Patriot things, that like Patriot can basically intercept something. It cannot, neither can do that, and let alone those 30 interceptors of the, ground-based interceptors against their ballistic missiles. The United States doesn't have air defense, which can defend anything, and so, but if you take a look attentively, how these policy papers, as I already stated, concocted by the amateurs, and they continue to circulate and continue to make it onto the tables of all those utterly incompetent and badly educated U.S. senators and congressmen, and to people like Trump, because they read those, Atlantic Council, where advocacy tanks. Yeah, they're not think tank. They don't know how to think. They, as I already stated, they are amateurs, including those people who wear the epaulets of the 2 or 3 stars. And guess what? If you look attentively at their sources, let me show you the source. This source they use is by some Mr. Durkalets. Well, Durkalets is a very unfortunate combination of words in Russian, because Durka in Russian is the slang for the nut job house, the asylum. And so he is, look what they refer to. It is Russian net assessment and the European security balance. Jacek Durkalets. Well, he is Polish. And look at this. This is produced by Livermore Papers on Global Security. Well, if Livermore wants to parade itself, and we know it's paraded itself because, when you have people working like this, look what he writes, this Mr. Durkalets, which lifts all this data, which is, of course, classic Ukrainian propaganda, from the internet, some blogs. But look at the background of this Mr. Durkalets. Jacek Durkalets completed this study while serving as the senior fellow at the Center for Global Security Research at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. Yeah, so, well, Livermore evidently doesn't care about reputation, which is laughed at. And so, look at this. He was a visiting scholar at the National Security Affairs Department of the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. He holds a doctorate in political science and master's degree in international relations from Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland. In other words, this guy, on which Atlantic Council refers to, is actually political scientist. He has no clue what he is talking about. He lifts all his data from some military blogs, which are probably controlled by CIA or GUR, or, well, basically Ukrainian propaganda. And then what you get the echo chamber thing. They refer to each other constantly. It's cross-pollination, essentially. One moron refers to another moron, then other moron refers to the same moron who refers to him, and they cross-pollinate each other without having access. Obviously, they do not have access to any serious data sets. They are just absolutely blind, no matter how many RC-135s or satellites are flying there over Russian territory. They don't have access to that. And then you read this basically so-called study. It's not study. There are all kinds of the high school at best, numbers, and these are the policy papers. And these are the policy papers which are constantly introduced, reintroduced, and published, reissued in the United States, and they learn absolutely nothing. That because the only thing they ever learned how to do is to beat the crap out of something like Saddam's illiterate semi-professional army, or some kind of the other altogether, third world, who knows what. I mean, they're, people armed with the, sticks and stones. And this is why they cannot accept the fact, guys, you're not in the same league. Go learn some things about war, which, of course, they do not teach in any kind of the military school in the United States, period. Let alone, I mean, again, for example, military education of NATO, let alone United Kingdom, is a joke. It's a joke. It's a pathetic joke at the military education and professional preparation of the cadre officers for the 21st century. They never had it to start with. And, well, except for the old, basically some old school guys. And just to demonstrate to you, now they have this thing. So Russians now, oh yeah, if the Kremlin is to be believed, they say that, yeah, sure, they better, that the Iskander-1000 missile can radically maneuver at high speeds during its terminal phase, all while launching decoys that will likely stymie any air defense systems arrayed against it. What is this all about? When they posted it from the National Interest magazine, tabloid, I might add, at 7 hours ago. Very simple. Russians are beginning to produce in their industrial quantities and serial production of the Iskander-1000 missile, which has the range of more than 1,000 kilometers and which will cover pretty much anything in the Eastern Europe if somebody decides to commit some idiotic, suicide by Russia. Well, evidently British really want to do that, Russians say, yeah, why don't you come and do it, So, but, yeah, the problem is, if you go into this Atlantic Council paper, even Iranians begin to explain that to these people that, guys, you are naked, you have nothing, nothing can stop anything which is the modern missile systems. And for example, these are essentially Iranians explaining about Fatah what it is. And they explain what are the what gliding vehicles are, how they fly, and why the United States has no capability to intercept anything. And essentially, so what they need to do is sit and wait and pretend that they can somehow, as Mr. Keith Kellogg, who wouldn't understand the first thing about the missile technology of the 21st century, neither about the combined arms operations, that actually there are no levers. And the question right now, if how fast Trump decides either to abandon this idiotic idea in Ukraine or whatever is left of it, or if Mr. Trump wants to go and escalate. Because what many people do not understand, while the United States stopped now financing of all kinds of things in Ukraine, they didn't stop the stream of the weapons. They will continue to stream there. But at this stage, United States has literally nothing it can provide Ukraine which can change the outcome, which is already clear. And what can I say? No matter how many papers Atlantic Council rant or all kinds of those people write, how about they go and learn the real history and basically adjust their worldview to understand that United States militarily is not even in the same league with Russia. And when I say it, I want to be repeated and I want to be quoted. United States lost the arms race. It also lost the ability to fight real war. And this is simple as that. And this is the only thing which defines the reality on the ground, even in the fantasies of those people who begin to abuse their sinecures and all kinds of the shyster fraudulent organizations such as Atlantic Council, Council on Foreign Relations, RAND, and all that. They are not think tanks. They don't know how to think. And many of them, they don't even have the toolkit. Like this Polish guy who wrote that, yeah, essentially. So, yeah, what can I say? You cannot save them. Echo chamber, it's either implodes, which is happening right now, or it will, maybe it will doom the United States. For Europe, it is over anyhow. And this is what I wanted to tell you guys today about some things starting this first day of February. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. That will allow me to continue to do what I'm doing right now. So talk to you later, guys. Have the nice rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.